Fantastic. So welcome everyone to this webinar on Radical KM and AI by the KNIM Special Interest Group at CILIP. I'm delighted to welcome back Stephanie Barnes, who's going to be presenting today. So Stephanie is a consultant and she specialises in creativity, innovation, collaboration and knowledge management. And she uses arts-based interventions to foster learning cultures, amongst other things. And so today I'm delighted to have her along to talk about how we can grow the unique strengths of humans in our organisations to work alongside AI so that we kind of harness the value, the best value in both of those. Okay, so Stephanie, over to you.
Great, thank you. And I will share my screen. Get my slides going. There we go. Okay. Get this. Excellent. Okay, good. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. This is the third one I've done, so it's nice to see still a good group coming out to hear what I'm saying. So who am I? Helen said a little bit about me, but I actually have a background in accounting and an IT, an MBA in IT from my education. So come at all of this from a very process, analytical, logical perspective. So you might want to keep that in mind as we progress through the presentation today, that I am a knowledge management consultant by choice. I got into knowledge management when I was at Hewlett Packard more than 20 years ago and have been self-employed for 20 years this month. In fact, next week is the 20th anniversary of me leaving Hewlett Packard. So I was doing knowledge management at Hewlett Packard for 4 years, just a bit more than 4. But and I'm Canadian, based in Berlin. I moved here 8 years ago. So October is a big month for changes and transformations, leaving HP, moving to Berlin, and all kinds of things. So that's a bit about me. I like to start my sessions off with a guided visualization. We're all so busy jumping from meeting to meeting, thing to thing, whether we're, in the office or working from home or working from someplace between the office and home. I like to start my sessions off just to get everybody centered and grounded and focused on what we're going to do for the next period of time together. So I invite you to close your eyes and follow along. If you're someplace walking around or perhaps driving in traffic or something that you need to pay attention to your surroundings, by all means, just do what you need to do and don't worry about closing your eyes. But hopefully most people are someplace that they can close their eyes and participate. So I invite you to get comfortable, take a slow, deep breath, and close your eyes. Picture in your mind's eye a small and delicate flower floating gently inside your skull, just behind the bone of your forehead. Notice the flower's color, its shape, the pattern of its petals. Let the flower drift slowly downward, gliding gently down your throat into your rib cage, drifting down and down, between your lungs, downward, gently downward, coming to rest in the lowest place in your abdomen, the place where your breath reaches when you breathe fully and deeply. quiet touch of color deep in the darkness of your abdomen. Hold the flower there. Hold it. Hold it. Now let it go. Let the flower vanish. But stay focused on the place where it was, deep down in the dark center of you. Focus on the darkness. Now, when you're ready, and only when you're ready, open your eyes and come back into our virtual room. Thank you. So just to take a second and reflect, if you'd like to share your reflections on that experience in the chat or unmute and share live, I would invite you to do that. And if not, that is of course fine as well. So as I said at the start, I like to start my sessions off regardless of whether it's a workshop or a webinar or just a regular old meeting with a guided visualization. I have several that I rotate through. So and yeah, it just helps us calm down and get centered and get focused on what's going to come. So thank you. I'd look at a couple of move on here. So Radical KM, this is my own creation. And Radical KM this is a name that I gave it in the first year of the pandemic. I had been calling it Creative KM up until that point. But Radical is about going back to the roots of how we learn, and knowledge management is, of course, about learning and continuous learning and helping people learn and find the information in the organization. And finding the information really is learning because they don't have it in their heads, right? So Radical KM is about, helping enable people to have the curiosity and the space for reflection to iterate and experiment and discover. We've educated this creativity and the arts-based intervention stuff out of ourselves in this drive to be efficient and effective, and the belief that we have to be logical and rational all the time, and we have to focus on like things like I studied in school, accounting, finance, process automation in my MBA. Certainly, I did all the maths and sciences in high school, and it was art. There was no place for art, and yet there's so many things that we can learn from art, and that art enables us to do, which is what we're going to talk about today. And these behaviors that art enables are really what we need in order to survive and thrive, not just survive, but thrive in this technology-driven, AI-mad world that we are currently inhabiting. So Radical KM and creativity and arts-based interventions really help us be more sustainable, both on a human level and in our decision-making, making better decisions for our organizations and our lives. So, and again, more on that later. The world has changed. When I started doing knowledge management in 1999, when I was still at Hewlett-Packard, a lot of it was around technology and people and process, but it was a little, I'm going to say, slower pace. Maybe a lot of the technology was really new. The web was still relatively in its infancy compared to how things are today, 24 years on. And so the world has changed. The pace of change has changed. Everything is increasingly more volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. This is VUCA, which you'll hear me use throughout this presentation. So, and probably you may have heard it in other places. Certainly, it's a term that's been around since the 80s, and just seems to be even more applicable today than it was 30 years ago. KM has certainly changed. As I was saying, 25 years ago when I got started, or 24 years ago when I got started at HP, there was a slower pace. There was more time for reflection. Things were moving, but not at the pace that they are now. And there wasn't always this drive to be increasingly efficient. And the idea that efficiency and effectiveness was always a straight line, I know, which has been really driven into us over the last quarter century. It was about people, process, and technology, but now in 2020 and beyond, it's about people, process, and technology, and helping them deal with VUCA, the craziness of the world that we live in, the uncertainty. And now in 2023, we have AI on top of it, not just regular old, social media and SAP implementations and the sort of technology that we were used to. Now we have AI, and it's popping up everywhere. And it's not just assisting us, it's actually complicating our lives because it hallucinates and creates all this misinformation that sounds really plausible. But when you look into it, if you do some critical thinking and go, this just doesn't sound right, or I need to make sure that this is really legitimate information. When you dig into it and do the research and that critical thinking, you find that, no, it's not. It's hallucinated. It's lied about it all. So it's added, in as much as it may have saved us in some areas, it's added in others, that we have to fact check it to make sure that we're not spreading misinformation. The other thing that has changed in all of this time is employees have changed. I think about when I started, graduated my undergrad in the early 90s versus how employees coming out of university now, what the things are they're looking for. They're looking for completely different things. They want to be coached and rather than managed, and they want autonomy, and they want to be able to do things the way that they want to do them. They don't want to be micromanaged and told how to do everything. They want some flexibility, especially we're seeing with the pandemic and the results of the early years of that people want to be able to work from wherever they're comfortable working from. They can be just as productive, working from home or working from some other location as they can be working in the office. And in fact, some people say, that they're more productive working from home than they are in the office. The research, there's new research every day that contradicts all of this. So the biggest issue, though, is around trust and helping people have the skills to work from home or work from wherever and not necessarily be in the office. There's no point in making people come back to the office just to sit on Zoom calls. In the office, they can do that just as easily from home. And so people want the flexibility to do this, to work from the right place for them. And so when I thought about all of these changes and all the things that's happening and who can we learn from? How can we help our knowledge workers in our organizations? What skills do we need to cope? And how should we handle this? We can't just keep throwing technology at things. Technology is great, and it does help make things better, but it also causes problems. And humans are not machines. We need to take breaks. We need to look at the world differently. We need time to reflect and be creative. And this is who we can learn from artists. This model comes from a book called Creative Company that was published. The English version was published in 2020. The German version was published a couple of years before that, in 2017, I think, or 2018. And Dirk Du Bois and Thomas Copeland, the two authors, interviewed over 100 people from different organizations and artists and different artistic backgrounds, and talked with organizations who were bringing artists in to work with them to do transformational projects and strategy projects and team building and all kinds of things, and found that creating an artistic attitude and artistic practice and bringing those into the organization built this creativity culture, which when you look at it, this elasticity, freedom, purpose, variety is what people are looking for. It's what they need to be able to do in order to cope and thrive in this world that we live in. So being curious, being passionate, being confident, and giving people the confidence and the resilience to get up when they get knocked down, giving the space for playful reflection and performance and learning, so that they can continue to iterate and evolve and innovate and share knowledge and share lessons learned, and continue on down the path that is life. So you see the challenges up in the upper right-hand corner. I haven't circled them, but they're complexity, acceleration, uncertainty, and volatility. So basically that's your VUCA that I mentioned a minute ago. So those challenges are being addressed by artistic attitudes and practices to create this creativity culture. So this is what we need in our organizations, is space to be both creative and analytical. There really is a spot for creativity. We need to make that space for it in the world that we live in. We're not just analytical, crunching numbers and data. We need to be able to take a break and get up from our desks or do a little guided visualization like we started off the session today with, to help us catch our breath, to pause and reflect, to look at the world differently, to give our brains a chance to do what our brains do best, which is to alternate between focused and diffuse thinking. And I'll talk a bit more about the neuroscience in a few minutes, but there is neuroscience, the science that backs all of this up. And so there is data for all of you wanting to know where the data is. The data is there. So we need that in our organizations, because creativity is what differentiates us from AI. AI is not creative. It just copies what's out there. It doesn't come up with new things. It might see patterns before humans do, but it's just looking for the data. It doesn't build something new. And I often talk about a painting that I did a few years ago that I was trying to express opening up, and I thought about what I wanted to do, and I put a zipper in the painting. I cut the canvas and I sewed the zipper in, and a curator here, the first time I showed the painting in an exhibition here in Berlin, the curator said, where did I get this idea from? And I thought, well, I was looking for how to open things up and how to display that in a painting. And I thought, zippers open up. So I figured out a way to incorporate that into the painting. She's like, you didn't see that someplace else? And I said, no. And, it came up. And so came up with it on my own. And so this is the thing that's uniquely human. We will ask those questions and step back and say, well, what is it I'm trying to do here? And we will understand the complexities of it. And the AI just doesn't do that. So we need to support ourselves and support our knowledge workers in our organizations so that they are better able to do this. Let the technology do what the technology does best, and let the humans do what the humans do best. And we need to help the humans do that. The other thing about creativity, when I'm not looking at all of this, is that the creativity enables sustainable leadership behaviors. So in saying that creativity and the arts-based intervention stuff, saying that arts don't have a place in our organizations, I looked down like, have we educated the sustainability out of ourselves? Have in our focus on being efficient and effective and analytical and rational and logical, have we, in putting everything in increasingly smaller and smaller boxes, have we lost the ability to be sustainable, to make sustainable decisions, to see the bigger picture, to see the whole system and understand the relationship between things, to really, have that sense of purpose and that enlightened self-interest, have the courage and the integrity to do something that is unusual, like put a zipper in a painting when you've not seen it before, or propose a solution to a problem that you're dealing with inside the organization. The courage to say, well, what if we do this? So, and that open-mindedness to ask the questions and see what happens. So, as I said, there is lots of neuroscience research and things that's been done. And this book, I talk a lot about this book. It came out in November. Sorry, not in November. It came out in March of this year. And and it has all this data and all these studies that support, the things that I'm saying about the importance of art. So it's Your Brain on Art, How the Arts Transforms Us, by Susan Megzaman and Ivy Ross. And Ivy works at Google, and Susan works at Johns Hopkins in a neuroscience program. And the thing about art, it really is a panacea. When I started doing this work, I'm like, this just sounds too good to be true. And when things are too good to be true, it sounds too good to be true. It probably is too good to be true, except that in the case of art, it isn't. It really is a panacea. It really does have these impacts. It helps our well-being. It helps our mental health. It helps us heal our body by decreasing the stress. It helps us amplify learning. I'm going to talk about some examples of that in a moment. It helps us flourish in the craziness of the world that we live in. It helps create community and team building and relationship building, and a whole bunch of other things. These are the ones that they talk about in the book, but I actually messaged it with the authors afterwards. And I'm like, what about, all these other things like sustainable leadership? And they're like, yep, it's there. They just ran out of space in the book. So the research is there. So amplified learning, the one that, these are 3 little case studies or examples that come from the book. And I put the page numbers in just in case you want to get the book and find the more details on the studies and the work that was done in each of the cases. The one that strikes me as the most important from an organizational knowledge management perspective is the bottom one about executive function. So training in the arts improves executive function. That is the capacity to manage thoughts, actions, and emotions to achieve your goals. Having strong executive function is critical in a VUCA world, which is what we all live in, as I was saying a few minutes ago. So having training in the arts, bringing it into our lives as a practice, as a habit, as a routine, not a routine, as a ritual, as in our daily lives, helps to improve that executive function. Executive function is not static. It continues to grow and mature and change as we learn and mature and change through the experiences that we have. Our brain is plastic. The arts basically help maintain that plasticity and that learning, our ability to learn. So amplifying learning is about using arts and playfulness to help with communication and collaboration, creating content, critical thinking, creative innovation, coming up with new ideas and new solutions to old problems. I'm going to talk about a case study from the Danish government in a couple of minutes. They had struggled with this problem for 10 years and came into a studio situation for a week and solved this problem. And like I said, I'll talk more about that in a minute. And the confidence that it gives people, the workshops that I have done for people that they've come in and seen the art materials on the table and gone, oh, are we painting? I didn't know we were going to paint, and been very hesitant. And then at the end of the 2-day workshop going, oh, I love this painting that I've created so much. I'm going to take it home and hang it up on my wall, and this has happened, this confidence. And certainly my own experience mirrors that, the confidence that I have just to ask questions and try things out, to iterate, that I have gained through having a artistic practice. An example of Starbucks, what they did, how they used an arts-based intervention in their organization. In 2008, they were having some trouble, and there was cultural issues. People couldn't connect and trust each other, and it was having an impact on operations and sales and results. And what they did was have a 3-day leadership retreat, and they used arts-based interventions. That's what ABI stands for, arts-based interventions, to get them thinking about things and engaging differently. And the work that they did in that 3-day retreat led to a 3-year reinvention, of the company. And this again comes from the book on page 161 to 63. So there's a lot more detailed what they did in the book, but this is the highlight. So this is the thing, that material, the ideas, the solutions that comes out of a 3-day retreat that kept them busy for 3 years, is notable, is transformational. And this is why we need to bring these into our organizations in big ways, like a 3-day retreat, but in small ways as well, like the guided visualization we did at the start. These are the kinds of the impacts that we have. And this is the last bit that I pull from the book. It's a quote from Keith Yamashita, who's the founder of SY Partners. And I am going to read you this quote because I think that it's important to take in every word of it. He says, "I believe we're at the very end of the efficiency movement in business. We can't get any more lean or any more efficient. We need to live as embodied humans, not just as cerebral beings. This means embracing all the senses and artistry and art of a life. For whatever reason, we've starved ourselves of all these other components in the sake of efficiency. Now I think it's about joy, about full human expression and an embodied life where things matter." And I'm seeing that when I talk to people, especially the last couple of months, a lot more focus on the human side of AI, about helping the humans. You're here today. I've done the same session twice before this fall, that we've had more than 100 people wanting to sign up to those earlier sessions. So, we've a huge amount of interest in this idea that how do we help the humans? The technology is great, but how do we help? How do we create organizations that are able to continue on with this pace of change, with the things that we're seeing in the world today? How do we help them be more resilient and innovative and connecting to each other and trusting each other so that we can do the things that we need to do to improve the situation that we're living in? So radical knowledge management is about people, process, and technology, as KM has always been, but putting creativity and arts-based interventions into the mix has this multiplier effect. And so this is radical knowledge management. Creativity and arts-based interventions is a multiplier for knowledge management, for creating a knowledge sharing culture, for creating an innovative, curious, critical thinking environment where people can do the best that they can do. So a lot of people ask me, want to know a process, want to know how this fits into KM. And really, all this flow chart shows is any place that there's people is a place for a creative intervention, an arts-based intervention. And I should say I have a fairly broad definition of arts. I talk a lot about painting and drawing, certainly, but it's much broader than that. I do improv things, but I also do things like going for a walk, and exercising as part of improving our creativity, just giving ourselves a space. So when we're doing some arts-based interventions, it's anytime that we bring people together, and the intervention you're going to choose is going to depend on how much time you have, how many people, where you are, if you're co-located in a meeting room in the office, or if you're at a retreat outside of the office, if you're doing it remotely and everyone's on a Zoom or a Teams meeting or something and you're doing it that way. All this stuff works. You just need to think about the logistics of it. I paint on Zoom meetings. I do my Radical KM class. We paint. Everybody's in their own little corner of the world, and we're painting. Everybody gets their art supplies, and we paint together and have very much the same conversations that we have if we were co-located in the room. So the advantage of splitting it up, the workshops and things up in a virtual setting, is that it gives us a chance to make those habits, to develop those practices over a period of time, rather than trying to cram everything into a 2 or 3 day workshop. Because we do want to build these habits, build these practices, and the rituals around it. And all of this is important, and I'm passionate about it because of my own personal experience. But there, as I said, there is all this research that backs up my experience. It helps us to learn, to innovate, to improve our problem solving. It helps us to experiment and ask different questions and come out of our comfort zones. It gives us the confidence and the resilience to do all these things. It releases our stress. It improves our focus. It improves our resiliency. All of these things that are so necessary to thrive in the world that we're living in. It gives us this mental capacity to continuously learn, which is about knowledge management, continuous learning, and being curious and iterate and find solutions, which is also why I tend to use the word practice rather than habits and rituals, although that all gets mixed together and there's a lot of overlap. But I like the idea of to me, practice has more context or more connotation of iterating and finding solutions and being curious, rather than habits. Habits and rituals I think of as being a bit more being done by rote and being done because that's the way we've always done them. So I like the idea of practice opening up the possibilities. So, but there's like I say, a lot of overlap. Tapping into our creativity and our inner artist helps us bring our whole authentic self to work, so that we're not leaving part of that at home, that we're not feeling like we have to hide part of who we are. That we can have a bit of fun and be creative and innovative and wear a clown nose, and let people know that it's okay to laugh and have a bit of fun. We learn better when we are having fun. We make better connections when we're having fun and we're laughing together and sharing things together. And it's okay. We don't need to be deadly serious all the time. When I started my career in accounting, we were deadly serious all the time. It was not that much fun. So, having a bit of fun, is certainly permissible and even good for us. So the other thing it does, tapping into our inner artist, is it helps us build our leadership skills because it gives us confidence and curiosity and helps us be brave and courageous in asking questions and saying, well, what if we do things this way? And being comfortable to stand up and do things differently than maybe we've done them before. So these are some of the ways we can become more creative. Certainly there's arts and crafts and artistic interventions, but there's more than that if we're talking about creativity. Just being conscious in the moment, meeting new people and having new conversations and asking different questions, getting to know someone else and what their experiences and backgrounds are, helps us be more creative, helps us be more curious, being playful, and tapping into our inner 2-year-old to approach and look at the world that way. Music, singing, some of the activities I do in the workshops and classes and things that I do, we're using music, not so much singing. We get coffee cups and things and make some music. But yeah, it's just is about making space to think and reflect and just to do nothing, to stare off into space and just be quiet and enjoy the silence, enjoy the peace. So Radical KM is about going back to the roots, as I said at the beginning, it's about going back to the roots of how we learn. And, you think about how kids learn when they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. They're being playful, they're being curious, trying, to fit things together, and how do things fit together, and what can they do with these toys that they've been given, or pots and pans, whatever's at hand. The box that the latest Amazon package came in, be playful, be curious, and iterate. This is what Radical KM is about. If you don't have the answer, then iterate till you do find the answer. So, and I know a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, but I work with lawyers, or I work with accountants, they're or engineers, they won't like this. And I'll say you would be surprised. A a lot of the challenge in this work is actually getting over the stories that we tell ourselves about why we can't do it. But if you feel like your organization is risk adverse, start small. Now, this is what we often do in knowledge management anyway, is start small. And so that applies here just as equally as other knowledge management activities. Start small. Start with, a clown nose. Start with a guided visualization, and start with people who are going to be friendly. So start with your knowledge management team, or start with your project team if you're not a knowledge management person. Start with those people and see, what happens. Start socializing it that way and bring it in step by step. You'll be amazed at people's reactions and the acceptance. In as many times I've been talking about this stuff now for 11 years. I have never had anyone get up and leave a workshop or a session that I'm doing or get angry or upset because I put my clown nose on, or because we did scribble drawings, or because we painted. There's been some hesitancy, certainly. I won't lie and say that there hasn't been hesitancy, but people have gotten over that, and have stayed and been curious enough to see what happens. And once people have the experience of this stuff, they go, oh, now I get it. It goes back to that quote a couple of minutes ago. We have to embody these things. We have to experience them firsthand. We can't just be in our heads and read about them and go, oh, I can't see that working. And I've had people say, read the papers that I published on Radical KM and go, oh, but I don't understand how this works. It doesn't make sense to me. And I always say, you have to experience it. It's like riding a bike or learning to swim. You don't learn to swim. You don't learn to ride a bike from reading a book. You have to go and get on the bike and fall off. You have to get in the water and learn to float and gradually learn to the steps to make up learning the front crawl or the breaststroke or the side stroke or whatever, your swimming stroke is going to be. You have to get in the pool and practice. You have to get on the bike and practice until you can not fall over or sink to the bottom of the pool. So start small. And I appreciate that this doesn't make sense to a lot of the analyticals, but like I say, once they have the experience, they go, oh, I get it now. And the thing about a lot of the engineers and the software development folks I've worked with, and some of the lawyers and accountants certainly too, they have some kind of artistic background, and they're doing these analytical, rational, logical jobs because that's what pays the bills. But they secretly long to paint or to sing or to play a musical instrument. And they may do this as a hobby at home on the weekends, because they don't see the workplace as being a safe place to bring that in. And so what Radical KM is saying is, it is a safe place. It is necessary in our organizations. We want you to share those things with us and contribute to how we're working together. So because all of these things give us opportunity for innovation, for collaboration, for team building, for having a social impact, making change in the world, amplifying learning, flourishing, creating community, getting to know each other and trust each other, and working together. So I talk about 2 implementation paths, typically starting small with little icebreakers, or a bigger intervention, creating a studio in the office. And honestly, the studio in the office is a way to make it worthwhile for people to come into the office, because it is nice to be in the room together. And then they have all the art supplies and all the facilitated process. They have a facilitator to make sure that things are going as towards a goal, and helping them, deal with any kind of communication issues that may arise. Both of these approaches, though, take patience and iteration and communication to find what works. Some things will work better than others, and it depends on the individuals involved too. So you might find with one team a particular kind of activity works better, but with another team something else works better. So sometimes some of the improv games that I do work better with engineers, whereas the painting and the drawing things works better with let me say non-engineers, although that's a bit of a stereotype. So it depends on the group. So it's good to try things out and see what works. And some days are better than others. Some days call for a particular kind of intervention versus another day. So be patient, iterate, be flexible, see what happens, see what works, and give it a chance. So this is the case study that I mentioned at the beginning, from the Danish government. It was about 10 years ago. And it was the Innovation and Knowledge Sharing Department that actually did this work. And they were faced with a lack of collaboration in the organization, specifically between two of the biggest teams, the departments, the lawmaking and the citizen services. And there was all these politics and silo creation, and there was lack of knowledge sharing and collaboration, and efficiency and effectiveness was non-existent. And they have been working on this problem. They were supposed to be drafting this law for 10 years. They have been trying to do this, and just had gotten nowhere because of the silos, because of the politics, because of all of these things that we are all familiar with as knowledge management people. We know this stuff hinders knowledge sharing within our organizations. And so what did the team do? They created a studio in the office space. They actually spent a whole year preparing the space, building it out, getting the materials for the space, the paint and the other tools that they were going to use, and developing a process framework to use in facilitating the interactions. They said the framework was meant to be used over a 5-day period. And the first thing was that they invited these two teams in for a week to use this process, use the room, use the painting and the materials, the arts materials that were there. And the results of this pilot, this week-long pilot, were strikingly good, is what the case study says. And of course, what happens when something is amazingly, strikingly good? Word of mouth. So the success of the pilot circulated, and then other teams, other parts of the organization wanted to use this space. So they actually ran the room successfully for 2 years. And people who participated in and used the space said that they were able to solve problems that could not have been solved in any other way. So again, strikingly good. All from this, creating a studio in the office and this facilitated process so that people sharing the space and communicating and breaking down barriers, breaking down silos, and finding solutions that, to these intractable problems or seemingly intractable problems. Unfortunately, all good deeds, don't go unpunished. So unfortunately, due to a reorganization, the whole IKS team was disbanded, went away, and that killed the studio space and all the knowledge management work and the facilitation work that was being done. They moved offices, so they lost the space. So even if people wanted to continue, they couldn't because the offices had changed. And so, it's a success. It didn't really matter. And so people often say to me, well, show me the data. The data is out there. We all know from KM perspective, the data is out there. It's not the data that makes or breaks this stuff. It's the emotional connection. And in this case, a lot of times there's people who have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. And so what this work does is call into question the status quo. And that's threatening for a lot of people. So it comes back to making psychological safety and making it safe and making sure that everybody is on side with this. It's 10 to the hour, so we're going to skip the scribble drawing activity. I may describe it in the Q&A, but I'll move us into the Q&A part of the session. I will just say that in the slide deck, Helen's got a copy that she'll share with everyone. This is a partial book list. There's the first 7 books. The book list, my book list now is like 45 or 46 books. So I'm happy to give that to you if you want to reach out and connect with me and ask me for that. I'm happy to send you that. And my contact information, of course. So if you want to reach out, that's my website is realizationofpotential.com. my email address, my LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. I post at least a couple of times a week, and I'm always happy to have a virtual coffee. If you would like to have a virtual coffee, that's my calendar link. You can see my calendar and my availability, and feel free to book something, and my phone number, of course. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask Helen what's going on in the chat, and yeah, start the Q&A.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stephanie. If anyone has a question, feel free to, I think we're small enough, you could just unmute and ask it. While everyone's thinking, I had a question that was kind of inspired by something, I think Libby E said when you did the guided visualization, I wish we could start all meetings like this. And it got me wondering, I know there's evidence for the benefit of these sorts of things for the intervention kind of situation where we need a very creative solution to an intractable problem. But I wondered if there was also a place for this in the everyday, you know, should we be creating a tiny bit of space for creativity for every meeting, and what benefits would that bring? And also, I suppose, following that up, what are the kind of tiny little creative things we can do in that situation?
Yeah, well, and I would challenge you and say, why can't you start your meeting, every meeting off with a guided visualization? I'm happy to give you the text of the one that I used. It comes from a book, one of the books on the book list, Orbiting the Giant Hairball, I think it's called. Orbiting the Giant Hairball, A Corporate Fool's Guide to Surviving with Grace. Excellent, fun book. It's a memoir of a guy that worked at Hallmark. So I'm happy to share the book with you and the text, because that, like I say, that's where I pulled the text from. Yeah, there's no reason. I mean, I've done webinars that have been 10 minutes long. I still do. I'll use 3 minutes of my 10 minutes to do this guided visualization, because I feel that it's important, and not just feel, I know that it's important, to get people focused, to let them come down and, relax and get focused on what we're going to do. So we carry so much tension around. And the same thing with the scribble drawings, when I can talk a bit more about the scribble drawings in a moment, they take 5 minutes, and I have a bunch of little activities like that. There's no reason why you can't take 5 minutes or 10 minutes out of a meeting and do one of these activities. The visualization is probably the quickest, because it's about 3 minutes, depending on how many pauses you take. But the scribble drawings take between 5 and 10 minutes. They're quick, they're easy. I do them by myself when I can't get out and I just have only a few minutes between meetings. I'll do a quick scribble drawing just to help me shift my energy and my focus so that I'm prepared for the next meeting. So it's what I said a minute ago. It's the stories that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves that we can't do it, but why not? What if that's not true? So the scribble drawings, just to say a little bit more about that. Do I have a pen? I have a pen. The scribble drawing, all it is take a piece of paper. This is scrap paper. I have here on my table, and a pen. That's all you need. You don't need anything fancy. And you close your eyes and make a scribble. So I don't know if that's going to show up. I usually do it with a marker. So I should have grabbed a marker. It comes up closer, but you start with that, and then you just do 5 or 6 additional embellishments. It doesn't have to look like anything. You don't have to make it into a snail or a snowman or a house or a tree no, just doodle, add 5 or 6 embellishments, additional lines, whatever, to the initial scribble. You can keep your eyes open for the rest of the other 5 or 6 embellishments, and that's it. And it's just helped shift your focus and got you out of that, staring at the screen, staring at that Excel spreadsheet. So, and this is fun to do if you're co-located, because you can do the initial scribble and then pass it to the person on your right or on your left. And in that case, make sure people put their name on it so that they get their paper back. And that's a lot of fun to see what happens with that. And there's all kinds of stuff that comes up because people have a notion about what it's going to look like when it gets back, or what direction they would take with it. and by the time you do 5 or 6 passes around the room and get the paper back, it's like, oh, I don't even recognize this anymore, and so it's fun, it's fun, and it's been a bit of fun, and it's got people out of their comfort zones a little bit and thinking about things differently. So the scribble drawings, I had somebody in a session much like this one time, when we did the scribble drawings, she's like, oh, I've been struggling with this branding project for 4 months and couldn't find a solution to it. And all of a sudden, from doing this 5-minute scribble drawing activity, she's got this flash of insight and solved the branding problem that she'd been staring at the screen, her laptop screen, for months over. So, we're taught this, we have to stare at the screen, that's going to solve the problem. No, it's not. Take a walk, scribble on a piece of paper, do something fun, do an improv game with your team, do something to encourage some diffuse thinking and see what happens. Magic happens.
Okay. Well, does anyone want to unmute and ask a question? I should ask that first.
No one's brave enough. Are you all still awake?
I don't know if you can see the chat. I think there's an interesting comment by Caroline talking about using Lego and clay as sort of methods for improving creativity. I wondered if the time is important, if 5 minutes is good, is 50 minutes better, or should we not worry too much about that kind of thing?
Take whatever time you have. So if all you have is 5 minutes, then take the 5 minutes. If you can do a half-a-day workshop and bring in either a bunch of smaller interventions or the clay or the Lego, to do something that's going to take half an hour, 45 minutes. I do painting when I have a 2 or 3 day workshop, and we create these layered paintings that an hour just isn't enough time to do it. It takes more time than that to get set up. So I think having more time allows for more possibilities, but even if you have a small amount of time, there still is something that you can do. Like I said, I've done 10-minute presentations and I use 3 of my minutes with a guided visualization. There still is something that you can do. Even if you only put the clown nose on, it has an impact. And that doesn't take anything. I can do that and continue talking. It still has an impact. People see it and go, oh, look at her, and laugh and smile. And just the act of smiling releases, some nice hormones and makes us feel a little better because we've smiled. So, yeah.
Oh, Caroline.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted. This has been a really great session. I really enjoyed it. One thing I like doing is, I like doing origami. That's really quite easy to do, and very paper folding is just really helps you think and clear your head, and it's quite a nice activity to do.
Yeah, that's a great activity. A great example. My origamis never turn out. I'm gonna have to take a class and get somebody to show me how to do it because mine never look the way they're supposed to. But yeah, it's about creating a situation where we're focused on the task, this painting or the origami or the photography. This is when I first started to play with this stuff when I was still at HP. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about the photography class, the drawing classes. I'm not much of a drawer, to be honest, but it kept me focused on the drawing or finding something to take the photo of, and I stopped thinking about, oh, well, what happens if, and it stopped all the worrying and the voice in my head that was saying, oh no, you shouldn't do that. No, you're just looking for a tree to take a photo of. Focus on looking for a tree to take a photo of, or a rock, or whatever is to take a photo, or a reflection to take an interesting photo of. So it gets you out of that worrying, overthinking mode, which I spend too much time in sometimes. So
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm going to have to stop, I'm afraid. It's 1:02 and a couple of people have had to drop off for other meetings. So could probably talk about this stuff all day, but we have to finish. So thanks so much for giving us the time and for running these sessions for us. Really appreciate it. Last few things I have to say, don't forget, we've got our webinar on KM chartership on the 19th of October. Which will tell you all about the background to that if you're interested thinking about doing the KM chartership. And as I said before, if you're not a CILIP member, think about joining us. It is a great way to meet knowledge managers and also information managers. And I should also say we are looking for a treasurer. So if anyone is even vaguely good with numbers or money and fancies joining us, that'd be great. It's great to be at the heart of something like the KNIM group, because you hear up about all these great things before everyone else does, so it's extra interesting. So anyway, thanks again to Stephanie, and thanks again to everyone for coming along. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.